we've got some education. Last week we talked about what we looked at first in terms of when the fields come out and how we start dissecting races. One of the first things we do, Dave, after we look at track conditions and all sorts of weather and stuff like that, is speed maps. Talk to us about the importance of speed maps and why you look at that first.
Well, the first thing you're looking at when you're looking at a speed map is the overall tempo of the race. So is it going to be slow, average, fast, and there's plenty of different numbers in between. But what that helps you figure out is who is going to be suited, because then you can look at where horses are in their preparation. If it's a fast tempo and you've identified a horse that's first up that quite often needs to run, is a good sit sprinter, well, you can get rid of that horse from your calculation. So working out the tempo, firstly, of the speed map before you even work out who's slotting in the where, that gets you to be able to eliminate horses that you think are going to be unsuited based on where they are in their preparation or the type of horse that they are. Some horses relish fast tempos. If I look at Farrago as a recent example, he come off a fast tempo, sprinted really well at Sandown, got a slow tempo the next start at Sandown, couldn't sprint with him. Then he got a fast tempo at Moonee Valley and busted the clock. So he's a horse that sprints off fast tempos, but when it comes to a sit sprint type scenario, he's not as effective. So the tempo of the race can often get you to factor horses in or get rid of horses in terms of the way that the race is going to shape.
Yes, definitely. And then you've also got, obviously barrier positions play a huge part in that, but also where the starting point of each track is, and that changes tempo dramatically as well. If they start on a bend, if there's a long run to the first bend and they give horses a chance to find their rhythm and find their spots, that has an impact. Obviously, what you look for, we mentioned it in the McEwen, for a perfect example, with so much speed on the race, everyone looks at that and it may tend to be a high-pressure race and suit those back in the race. Is that how you kind of think about it as well?
Yeah,
pressure?
It is. Yeah, there are examples where it's too high pressure for back markers as well.
I think that'll be the case with the Inferno potentially. If they do go hard, he'll be out of his comfort zone first up. So many things to dissect there.
That's spot on. That'll be one of the ones where they'll come back to scale and say they actually went too fast. So you might think that a very fast tempo would suit those way back, but probably with a very fast tempo in a race like the McEwen, 1,000 metres, you just want to be just off them and covered up.
And I was keen to lay a couple of horses in the McEwen, but then you look at the speed map and they might just be the last horse standing. They might be just behind the speed, like Zoo Style, potentially if Coolangatta crosses and they go real hard and in the Congo goes forward as well, puts the pressure on, he could just be the one there. Yeah. The leaders have come back to him and he's just...
And there's so many variables that go into the overall tempo of the race. So you mentioned the start point, like for example, 1,400 metres Warwick Farm shoot start. They're often slow average run races. Then you got the wind.
You see Nash come wide.
Yeah. But then you got the wind, like for example, Randwick on Saturday is a southerly. So down the back, from the 1,600 metre start, it's a headwind. So there's going to be no rush to get to the lead in those particular races. So they could be slowly run too. Then there's change of tactics. You look at where horses are in their preparation. You can often find before an official change of tactic comes in, you can see a pattern of a horse and think, well, third up today, less pressure on paper, up in distance, this horse could go forward. Then you can back them early because you can see their pattern in the past. You've seen that there's probably going to be more intent than their first and second up runs in this race. Take the early price, the tactic notification comes through, and they're often the type of horses that the market can find in the last 10 minutes.
Chris Waller, king of that. Draws wide, inside barrier. So he draws wide, goes back, inside barrier, third up, sits behind lead. And
there was one that really stood out, Sentimental at Rose Hill, like last year. He put a change of tactic in 30 seconds before the race. I'd already backed her thinking that she was going to go forward.
Were you sweating when that change of tactics hadn't come through?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
It's worse when they don't announce them or they announce them and it doesn't happen.
And we've only talked about the race shape in terms of the tempo. Then you've got the speed map of who's going to sit where. For example,
who sits wide, who sits,
like I'd spoke about I'm Loving You at Moonee Valley. So that particular track, barrier 3, people can often fall into the trap of, I've got a low draw. It can utilise that and go forward. But if there's speed drawn outside it and it hasn't shown early speed in the past, well, it has no choice but to flop 2 pairs back on the rail, and that's when you can be against things. Think of Bivouac. Obviously, Terry Bailey did his speed maps that time that Bivouac went around at Moonee Valley as a as a short price favourite, and he was
Don't mention
everyone
that.
in the world had mapped him to be in the coffin, and that's where he ended up.
Don't mention that. I got him. I got on him at a big price too early.
Yeah,
early.
yeah.
I just thought he was heading to the race, and he just
Yep.
did not find luck. Then you've also got a lot of people, and I know stables even think about this. Wide draws, no matter the race shape, can actually be beneficial, right? And people see barrier 12 and think, nah, awful barrier, but definitely suits. I like wide barriers on leaders. I'd much prefer nature strip drawn barrier 12 than barrier 2, for example.
100%.
So they just depends on the horse and the race shape as well. But leaders from wide barriers at certain starting points are really beneficial.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we've spent five odd minutes talking about speed maps. We haven't even covered everything, and there's so many different variables that go into it that you can get wrong. So it's just one piece of the puzzle.
We might look at an example next week and continue this chat about speed maps. Might be an idea because we could talk about it for ages.
Yeah, my best idea about speed maps is being able to get rid of horses from my calculations and find horses that I'd like to focus on.
Love it. Well, let's talk a bit more about that and how you do them as well next week. Gamble responsibly. Call 1-800-858-858.